As a new class of future lawyers heads to law school, they do so in the face of statistics that question whether it's a smart financial move. Despite a recent controversial study that estimates the lifetime payoff for a law degree at $1 million, critics say the reality is more grim. The average student who earns a Juris Doctor from a public law school graduates with nearly $76,000 in debt, reports the American Bar Association. At private schools, that figure rises to $125,000. With only one full-time, long-term, JD-required law job available for every 2 graduates, there's an equally perilous scarcity of work. Perhaps the biggest problem students face is figuring out whether their gamble will pay off. Since debt, employment and payoff numbers are national averages, they say little about future prospects for an individual student or whether the law profession is right for you. Before turning the tassel, it's crucial to look at where the jobs are, who's in debt and what you can do to stay in the black. Here are 7 metrics for figuring out if law school will be worth it. For the group of very select law schools at the top, the employment prospects are terrific, says Stephen Harper, a former attorney and author of The Lawyer Bubble, A Profession in Crisis. Life can look awfully good, and it will be awfully good for the vast majority of those people, but that's maybe 10% out of 200 law schools. There is a sharp discrepancy in job prospects between first and lower tier schools. When comparing U.S. News & World Report's top 20 law schools with institutions that landed in the 126 to 146 ranking range, students attending upper echelon institutions were nearly twice as likely to hold full-time, long-term law jobs as their lower-tier counterparts. Students attending lower-tier schools were also about 2.5 times more likely to be underemployed. The Ivy League isn't the only ticket to a postgraduate job, says Kyle McIndy, executive director of Law School Transparency, an organization that helps students with the decision to attend law school, and provides employment and underemployment data on law institutions nationwide. Schools with a solid, local reputation and strong ties to the community can be just as effective at finding work in that area. Regardless where you attend, your performance will be a factor for future employers. A study published last year in the Journal of Empirical Legal Studies shows that grades are the most important predictor of career success, even more so than your school's reputation. The study, authored by law professors at UCLA and the University of Arizona, states that it is well known that judges care greatly about grades in choosing their clerks, professors care about grades in choosing their research assistants, and many employers insist on good grades in choosing new hires. Harper says that students who can stay above the bottom 25th percentile in GPA have the best shot at landing a job that pays enough to repay student loans. You have to be really honest and realistic with yourself about, how well am I going to stack up against my peers, he says. You have a very hard time convincing anybody, I think, who's entering law school that they'll ever wind up below the median, much less below the 25th percentile in anything, whether it's practicing law or something else, but guess what? That's just mathematics. There's an honest self-reflection that has to happen. Students should think foremost on why they want to be a lawyer, says Andrew J. McClurg, author of One Hell of a Ride, a well-traveled professor's roadmap to success in the first year of law school. If their only reason was to make a whole lot of money, that was never a good reason, even when the economy was great. Many students have unrealistic expectations about post-law school life and few have a clear picture of the daily lives of practicing attorneys, says Lovin. Some don't know that they may not use their JD. A survey by the NALP shows that 1 in 5 2012 graduates worked in a non-legal profession or held jobs where a degree might have been an advantage or requirement, but passage of the bar was not required. The best way to understand what attorneys do is by observing them firsthand, she says. Even in college, people often will get part-time jobs in law firms. They can volunteer for organizations where lawyers are working and doing public interest work. They should talk to lawyers. If they know lawyers, they can shadow lawyers, she says. The one thing they shouldn't do is assume that what they are seeing is the entire range of what lawyers do. Getting into a good school and acing your classes is only half the battle. The law grads who are getting jobs are the ones who have spent time hobnobbing with future employers, says McClurg. Joining student organizations and going to bar functions and putting yourself out there and making connections, other than your academic record, that's really one of the only things you can do to increase your marketability, he says. That also means remembering that you may not be able to get a job in your first choice of legal field, says Blair Gould, a third-year law student at Wayne State University who's primarily interested in corporate and real estate law but is also gaining litigation experience. People need to continuously be diversifying their legal skill set, he says. Take advantage of any kind of connections you can make and join any civic or social organization you can, because all of those things will come into play eventually. You never know what's going to happen in the future. Nearly 9 out of 10 third-year law students advise those considering law school to consider an institution's financial aid package before enrolling.